So we're going to sit down in comfortable seats. Sarah, I met you last year on a weekend at your church. I think it's on. It'll turn on, don't worry.
It'll turn itself on, will it?
Yeah.
Nope.
I think it's on.
Okay. Oh.
Perfect. And I was really struck by your journey of faith, but I wonder whether you can tell us, first of all, a little bit about yourself and how you became a Christian.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Sarah Newnham. So I'm married with an 8-year-old son. It's a little bit of a spoiler alert for my story. Oh, this has gone off again. There we go. I grew up in a Christian family, but I came to faith really. Should I just keep going? I came to faith. I have a very loud voice. I can always shout.
Try this one.
Thank you. Okay. I came to faith after university, had to move back with my parents, wasn't really sure what to do, and just started hanging out with some friends that I'd known as a child from church, and that's very much how I kind of came to faith again. And then just a little bit about my background. I was a humanitarian aid worker. I used to work for the organisation Tear Fund, and that's very much been part of my calling and my faith. And the last few years, I've been a sort of coach and a consultant to charities like Tear Fund, still in the same work.
Brilliant. And about 10 years ago, you went through a particularly tough time, didn't you? Do you want to kind of share a little bit about some of the events? Yeah,
over the course of about 3 to 4 years, I went through 3 particularly kind of difficult, challenging times. So the first was struggling to have children. The second was my husband was in a major bike accident. And the third was that I was diagnosed with cancer. And so they've become very much part of what I've had to cope with during that time. Yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit more about that, but also how you saw the Lord's hand in what happened and also how he helped you through it?
Yeah, sure. So let me tell it a bit more in a story style. I saw kind of God's purposes and his fingerprints all over it, really, and I found it quite useful looking back at a journal at that time as well and getting a real sense of how he moved. So it started really, we'd been trying for children for about 18 months, and I don't even say I was praying. I think I'd got to the point of kind of really lamenting and wailing to God about this and just feeling real frustration. And just in myself, I felt a real audible voice that said, "Trust me." And I really sort of held that and obviously continued in my impatience and my waiting, but trying to trust God. And I guess at times I sort of really resonated with Abraham and Sarah as to how they felt in that time. And then a few months after that, still in this time of trust and waiting for whatever God was going to bring, my husband was out cycling one day and bam, a car drove straight into him, and he ended up in hospital in London for 10 days. He had broken cheekbones, nose, ribs, collarbone, massive gashes in his back, his arms, his legs. Pretty devastating. So 10 days in hospital and 6 months of rehab before he was back to work. So there we were, our mid-30s, 3 years into our marriage. I was spending a lot of time kind of caring for him. That sense of what God had said to me, that trust me, just felt really hard during those times. And I look back at my journal, and I used the word despondency. That's how I felt during that time, real darkness. And I should add that over a few years, I'd had a acid reflux problem. It's a hereditary issue, but it had been getting worse and worse, and it was burning my throat and, really causing me a lot of pain. a lovely friend of mine took me on a retreat. It was like a healing retreat. And we prayed, and people prayed for me. And I had complete healing from that acid reflux. And I can say 10 years now, I've not had any at all. So I really felt that power of God's complete miraculous healing during that time. And eventually my husband got better, went back to work. We started having some tests in an effort to get pregnant. And one of the tests that I had to take could harm a baby if you had it. So you had to take a pregnancy test, and the pregnancy test came out negative. But because of my job, I used to travel quite a bit, and I was traveling to South America, and they said, you can't have this test right now, you have to wait another month because of your travel plans. So I remember that real sense of just a huge disappointment. But a few weeks after I came back from that trip, I found that actually I was pregnant, and I had been pregnant even though the pregnancy test had come out negative. And so I have that real sense of God protecting the baby. So I had my lovely son, Thomas. He's 8 years old now. And then the day that I went back to work after maternity leave, I found out that I had cervical cancer. And I went through a series of tests and things, and then I was basically given 24 hours to decide whether or not to have a hysterectomy and the implications of that either way. So we went ahead with it, and then I would say I went through 18 more months of just waking up every morning as if I'd been slapped in the face. That sense of kind of picking up a burden and putting it on every day. Still makes me a bit emotional. That sense of just picking up this burden, you know, waking up going, I've had cancer, I can't have kids anymore. And that was really hard. And I went on another retreat. Retreats feature quite a lot for me. I really recommend them. I went to Feddwl Brennan. I don't know if anyone knows it in Wales, but it has this enormous cross up on the mountain side. And people were praying for me, and they said, go up and symbolically nail this burden on the cross. And that's what I did. And I've had a real sense of just freedom and peace ever since then. It just took that burden away. So, yeah, I've felt like I've really seen God, and, you know, through the miraculous, through the long haul, through the dark times. Yeah.
Wonderful. And what did you learn particularly about God during that time? His help.
I think the thing is that he doesn't take those burdens away from us, but he walks through them. And I think, as Charlotte said, he has purposes in that. But we have to set our eyes and our hearts on him, and he'll provide for us. He can be a healer and a refuge for us, but we have to put those burdens on him. And I know that at times that's still a massive learning for me. It's often those retreat days that are really important for me, and just pouring everything out in prayer. But in the day-to-day busyness, that can be so hard. I think the particular verse that I was given at the time that really sums it up is Isaiah 61 verse 3, which is to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. I think for me it's that sense of kind of taking off that kind of the ashes and the mourning, and instead putting on that garment of praise. It's that real sense of taking off one burden and putting kind of God on, as it were. And I think I've just learned that through those dark times, you know, they can be long, and you do have to endure a lot, but you can trust him, and he will work his purposes out in that time.
Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thanks.
You've done so well. Thank you very much for your honesty as well. And I'm sure in a room of people this side, there'll be other people who have struggled with unanswered prayer, unfulfilled longings. And actually, if that is you and you would like to pray with someone, maybe pray with someone who you've come with over coffee. Emily Armistead and Bethan Hobbs will be up here during the coffee break if you want to pray with them as well. But actually, isn't it wonderful that actually the truth that we know about God, that he is our refuge and our strength throughout this life, and our hope as well for the future as well. And we know that one day when we stand before him, every unanswered question will be answered. We'll understand why, and also all our tears will be wiped away.